In this AcuReview 2 training video, we're going to go over how to create and edit diagnosis templates. In other AcuReview 2 training videos, we talked about the fact that AcuReview 2 is a template-based system for using for diagnosis. And we showed, when we did the video for the doctor review screen, how to select a template to do a diagnosis, but we didn't talk about how to create and edit them. So that's what we're going to do in this video, is we're going to show you how to create and edit those templates. So this again is the doctor review screen. And on the doctor review screen, you've got your drop down here to be able to select your template, as we showed you in the doctor review video. And now next to that is this plus sign. And so the plus sign opens up the template window. And now you're in the template window. Now the other way to get to the template window is from the main menu. So if you're on the dashboard, for example, and you're looking at the main menu, you can click the template button and that will open the same exact window. So we have it in both places depending upon what kind of a workflow you're doing. So if you're going to do a whole bunch of templates at one time, you might just do it from the main menu. If you are in doctor review and you're about to do a diagnosis and you realize that the template is wrong and you need to edit it or you need to add something, you could do it straight from there. Based on your workflow and whatever is easier for you, you could get to this same screen from either button. Okay. And there's a few places in AcuReview 2 where we do that to try and make it easier for you. So now that we're on this template screen, you'll notice that the template screen gives you a lot of the information about the template. So it tells you whether or not it's a favorite, and you'll see that this blue star, if it's filled in, it's a favorite. And if you click on it, that makes it filled in like that. And if it's not filled in, then it's not a favorite. And so then the favorites will show up first on your list. So your list is sorted alphabetically by code, but the ones that are your favorite show up before in top priority. And that is so that the ones that you use most often, you can select as your favorites, and then those will be at the top of the list, making it easier for you. So that's favorites. Then you have your code. Your code is how you identify the template and how the system identifies the template. So you're going to have to use a code to identify the template so that you know when you type that in. So if I type acute, I'm going to get this particular diagnosis because that's the code that I use to create it. Then we have the category code. Now the category code, like the code, is a required field for when you create a diagnosis template. And that's because the category code is what determines what category of diagnosis that this particular diagnosis is. So whether it's cancer, benign, positive atypia, that's going to be based on what you pick as the category code. So in order for that to fill out when you pick the diagnosis, you've got to pick that in the template, and that's why it's a required field. So those two are both required fields. Now here under type, you see this one says esophagus. So type is a optional field. It is not required. And what type means is that you can lock down a template so that it can only be used for a particular site. So in this case, esophagus. So if I was trying to do a diagnosis on the stomach, then this would not be available because it's listed as an esophagus diagnosis. So because it's an esophagus diagnosis, it only shows up under esophagus. And if I wanted it to show up under stomach, I'd make it a stomach type diagnosis. So that's what that's for, is to narrow down your list so that certain things only show up when you're doing that type of site. So now we have the diagnosis itself, okay? And then we have the secondary diagnosis and the notes. Now the way these are, and you see that this one only has a diagnosis, whereas these have a secondary diagnosis as well. So what can happen is, based on how you fill this out, selecting this template will either just fill out the primary diagnosis, or it'll fill out the primary and the secondary diagnosis, or it'll fill out the primary, secondary, and the new feature we have now is notes, so that you could actually do the note as well, so that you could have all three fill out just from one template. And so that's a recent addition, was the notes that we added. So that's the way the templates work. Now on this screen, you can sort by any column, like in most places in AcuReview 2. So if I click on code, I'm sorting, okay? And so that sorts it. And then if I want to, I can also search. So if I type something to search for, Now I've found all the diagnoses that have that word in them. And then if I want to clear it out so I can see all the diagnoses, then I would empty out the search field again. And so any of these can be searched and you could find it that way. So now let's talk about how to edit a diagnosis. So if I click on this diagnosis, I'm now in edit mode. So I'm now seeing the different fields that I can edit in order to make this diagnosis. So I've got my code. So again, that's to identify the template. I've got the type, and that's a drop down. So we've got that picked as esophagus in this case. We've got this mandatory field of category, and that's a drop down as well. Then we have your text. So this is the diagnosis text. You can type whatever you want in here. And when you select a template, remember that the text of the template will appear, and then you can edit or add to that as well. So you can modify the text that appears. So this is just sort of a starting place if you want, and then you could add additional text to that. Then we have, again, the secondary diagnosis if you want to have that show up as well. And then the notes, this is where the text for those things go. So if you want to edit those templates, that's how you do it. Now, this secondary diagnosis checkbox, that is if you just want to create a template for a secondary diagnosis. You'll notice on the doctor review screen, there's a drop down for primary diagnosis and there's a drop down for secondary diagnosis. That secondary diagnosis drop down is only populated for those templates that have this box checked. So if this box is checked and you have a secondary diagnosis, then you would only be using this as a secondary diagnosis template. So that's how you create that. And then you have your CPT and your ICD-9. And ICD-9 code is not going to pop up for the template unless you have it entered here. That's how it populates. That's where the ICD code comes from. And so when you're finished editing, you would hit the checkbox. If for some reason you decided you didn't want this template anymore, you would hit the garbage can to delete it. This button will stop and take you back to the full list of templates. Plus is to create a new one. So since we didn't make any edits, we're not going to need to save this one. But what we're going to do is to show you a new one, we're going to hit the plus sign. And a plus sign is the same thing. It's just that everything is empty. So it's just ready to start from scratch. So you would type in your code. You would type in, you would select your type. You would put in the category, type in diagnosis, and then the text for the other stuff. And if it was a secondary diagnosis, you check the box. You put in a CPD and an ICD, and you're done. All right. Now, to go back to the grid view for a minute, I just want to show you what a secondary diagnosis looks like. So if I hit this, then I'm looking at one that just has a secondary diagnosis. And you'll see it's got the secondary diagnosis selected. It's got the ICD that I want to show up for that diagnosis. And then it has just the secondary diagnosis. So it just has the secondary diagnosis text. So it's just going to be used as a secondary diagnosis. So that's how this would work if you wanted to do one that was just a secondary diagnosis. Now I'm going to close this. And I'm going to show you, just to show you from what I saw before, that when I look at the drop down, see how the ones that are favorited show up first. And on secondary diagnosis, we're going to go this one because it doesn't have one yet. So if I hit secondary diagnosis and I pick one of the categories, then it only fills out the secondary diagnosis. It doesn't fill out the first one. So that's a diagnosis template. That's how they work. Please remember that the diagnosis templates are your own. So you're responsible for your own templates. You can edit them, add them, remove them as much as you want. Many of you have asked to have templates that were from some other pathologists. So you may have gotten the other pathologist templates. Once you get that list of templates, then it becomes your own. And then when you modify them, they're just yours, and the other pathologist doesn't see the changes that you've made because they're your set of templates. So whatever you need to do with them, whatever you want to do with them, that's up to you. You can make whatever changes you want. And that's it on the templates. Again, please remember there are other training videos. So if you want to see other AcuReview 2 training videos, you can look at our full list on the YouTube playlist, or on our website, there's a list of training. And then also, if you notice on this screen, there's the little question mark. The little question mark will take you to our website with our list of training videos as well. So you can go to all the videos from there as well. All right. Thank you.